to go into what we call our flagship product. And this is not unfamiliar to you. And if it is, I will be very concerned, and we could have a word and we can chat about why is this unfamiliar? Because right now, this is one of the #1 selling RAs that are out there. It's one of the most popular RAs that are being sold by most. So I often get asked, my broker is a list broker. How do I sell a Cumulus Echo RA to a list broker? From my experience, and this comes back from when I did belong to a list company once upon a time, once they are in that space of writing for certain companies, it's very difficult to convert them to a life product. There are two different types of licenses that apply. What you could do to try and show them or illustrate is from a commission perspective. So remember, commission plays a big part in their world in the sense that life RAs are very expensive compared to a LISP type of RA. And I'm going to show you, I've got an example so we can talk through that. So I just want you to keep that in the back of your mind, because that could be a little bit of an Achilles heel in your world. The first thing that we need to know about the Cumulus Echo RA is that the contributions can be done through a lump sum and a regular payment. But I would start off with a regular premium first if the client opts to do a lump sum down the line. Simply because of the systems that we have, unfortunately, it can't cater for a lump sum and then a regular premium. So if your client wants to do a Section 14 transfer, start off with the regular premium and then do the Section 14 transfer. You can retire anytime from age 55. This is a standard retirement age. Your client is not bound to retire at his contracted age. He can retire from the policy from age 55. But please note, we will recalculate the bonus at that point in time. And I've got a few examples to show you. From an investment perspective, we've got the best of breed. So from your Allen Greys to your Coronations, Nedbank, 91, we've got them on our platform. The very popular funds that you would get on any other platform, we will cater for that. More importantly, we again able to give you, from a cost-effective point of view, are those Satrix funds that come in at a minimum of 0.3%. The longer you're invested with Sanlam on the Cumulus Echo RA, the more contributions you make, the higher the wealth bonus. If there's one way you're going to remember it, is that the longer I invest, the more that I put into the policy, the bigger the wealth bonus is. And ultimately, you need to understand, where does the wealth bonus fit in with your client and where does it come from? Number one, your wealth bonus is a rebate of your fees and charges, and I'm going to show you how it's displayed on the quote. Two, if I'm invested, if I stop paying my premiums, let's say at age 60, and I continue the policy even past age 60, I didn't retire off the fund, I still keep it till age 65. Within that 5-year period, my wealth bonus will continue to grow in line with my underlying asset. So that's very important. If I'm invested into, just to keep the example simple, an Allen Gray balance fund, whatever I receive as a return from the Allen Gray balance fund is how my wealth bonus will grow. So it influences the wealth bonus. Your retirement savings, your wealth bonus, very important. It forms part of your 1/3, 2/3 split when you retire. So when individuals will ask you, will I pay tax on my wealth bonus? Potentially, if it forms part of your 1/3 option when you retire. And then, of course, like I mentioned, when you reach your retirement age, you have the option to stay invested with us. Unfortunately, the option to go into a living annuity with us has been discontinued. So I need to adjust that slide. But you can stay invested with us. Like I said, if you choose to add on more money in the future, or you just want to keep the policy until you decide when you're comfortable to retire, not a problem. We will keep the policy intact. And again, those funds will grow in line with your underlying asset. Some of the things I'm going to cover today are the low premiums, your flagship fund range, the competitive EACs that we offer, wealth bonus booster, flexible commission structure, and I think this is important in your world, and of course, portfolio pricing. Let's get into the low premiums. Now, when you've done a quote, you probably saw you had two options, and the two options came in the form of the core option or the comprehensive option. And the core option very simply was a one fund option, a little bit more cost effective than your comprehensive option, which holds multiple funds on that platform. But effective in November of this year, we're going to be closing down the core option. So unfortunately, we won't have accessibility to it from November onwards, but you will still have the same premium of 300 Rand available on the comprehensive option. So that's something great for us to keep note of. Within this range of funds, we're able to do a few things. You can choose between having a Reg 28 compliant fund, which generally is your default option, or if your broker is doing his own building blocks. What does that mean? He chooses 60% into an equity fund, and then 25% into a property fund, and then 10% into a bond fund. You are able to do it on the alternate option. So by default, when you go into your quote, you will see the Reg 28 option, but you can actually change it so that your broker can do his building blocks option. And of course, note, if he's doing the building block option, then he is responsible to ensure that that client is always Reg 28 compliant. So it's not a Sanlam thing. This is just a legislative rule.
Can I maybe add one note there for the team? So guys, I have received requests before where they want a minimum premium, I think 250. And they say that the client saw it in marketing and social media. So just remember that that's direct to consumer. So that's not through a financial advisor.
Fantastic. No, I'm glad you said that. And more importantly, I'm just going to get my highlighter out of my laser point. The 300 Rand is applicable if the term is 20 years or more. If it's between 10 and 20 years, it's 750 Rand. If it's 5 to 10 years, it's 1,000 Rand. So the shorter the term, the more premium you're going to be paying. This is an example, and this is specifically in the professional market. So if you weren't aware, we were once married to another company that starts with a P. And I was going to say ends with an S, but and basically what had happened is that we split along the way, but we still play in that professional and graduate space. So we are very prevalent in that space. And it's important to note where we stack up against our competitors. So if your client was doing a 2,500 Rand a month with an increase of 5% per annum over a 25-year period, and let's assume that his gross return was 6%, and this is according to ASISA standards, we're going to assume that we used a 50% in-house fund in order to do a comparison. So this is another thing I need you to take note of. When you're using a competitor quote, and the competitor says, well, we are cheaper than Sanlam, these are the things that you need to check. Is it a 2,500 Rand RA? Is it increasing at 5% per annum? Excuse me. Is it a 25-year term? And is the return similar? Just by changing the return to 10% could outprice Sanlam. So it could make us look like you're receiving more of a return with the competitor than you are with Sanlam. So just keep that in mind. The next thing to keep in mind is the fund selection. If you're using an in-house fund with Sanlam, remember, you can continue to even use the Satrix fund because that is an in-house fund. They could perhaps use an Allan Gray balance fund or a All Mutual balance fund, for example. And again, we've got 50% Coronation balance plus. The commission has to be the same. 50% upfront, 50% as and when. If you're doing a unit trust option, we've used 1.5% excluding VAT and payment-based fee of 0.7%. So this is how we're going to try and look at us versus the competitor, because it's been known that life insurance companies are way more expensive than a list company. Now, when you're looking at your quote, you're going to see this block. You know it as your EAC table. But what is the purpose of your EAC table? The purpose of your EAC table is to allow your client the opportunity to look at us from a pricing point of view in the future. So if I were to opt out of this platform in a year's time, so let's say next year, this time, I decide that I am going to terminate my policy with Sanlam, it could potentially cost me 7.2%. So whatever my return is, let's call it 6%. Whatever my return is, minus the 7.2% is what I will receive as a net return. So that is the purpose of your EAC. It accumulates all the fees and charges, and it's applicable upon termination only. This is not your actual cost to the policy. If you look at other competitors, there's 4.6, you got 6.4, 5.8, 31.1, 6.2, and 27.3%. So we can establish, just by looking at these numbers, that we have a fair shot in terms of how we look next to our competitors. But this is probably where the most important part of what you're looking for is. Where are we from a term perspective? Because remember, my client is not just looking to invest so that he can access his money from the two-part system. My client is specifically putting money away so that he can ensure that when he gets to retirement in 25 years' time, he has built up a solid enough a retirement pot, and he's going to receive an income. So that's what you need to sell to the broker. Where are we versus the competitors over a specific period, provided all these variables are similar or on the same track. So your premium increase and the premium and the term is absolutely critical from an EAC perspective, because these things influence your retirement, your term to retirement EAC. So if you're a professional client with Sanlam, specifically on the Cumulus Echo RA now, we will give you a bonus that is going to be 0.2% higher than an individual who is a standard or a graduate. I will show you just now. But the reason why I'm pointing this out is on your EAC table, we include the wealth bonus. So it's not a separate calculation. It's not something that you have to look for in the quote. All our fees and charges are displayed under the EAC. Let's have a look at some of the commission options. You have your initial upfront commission, your payment-based commission, and your fund-based fees. So in this example, if a financial planner is looking at commission and the EAC, the impact of how his commission is going to influence his EAC, this is probably your go-to chart. So this is 1,000 Rand a month at 5% per annum, growing at over a 25-year period. Now, the EAC tables are going to show you that if my client had to do a net return, given the current EAC and the fees and charges that have applied, this is what the return over those periods are going to be. We need to concentrate on what is the term to chosen retirement. So the standard commission on live platforms are generally 50% upfront, 50% payment-based. That commission structure, given this specific example, is 2.2%. If your broker had to go completely 100% payment-based fees, which is your as and when fee, that's 2.2 as well. If he's going to go 50% upfront and he's going to take a fund-based fee, which you probably know as a trailer commission, and this is an important conversation, is 2.6%. If you're looking at payment-based fee versus a fund-based fee, this is also 2.6%. Now, this right here is probably where we are playing in a very similar space as a LISP advisor or a LISP broker. And if you're doing a quote, the variables need to be very similar. So what we are showing you or demonstrating is the ability to change the commission structure, which ultimately will influence the EAC. Guys, we can never be cost effective on every single platform. It's an absolutely, it's almost impossible for us to do that because we can't cater to every single person out there. But at least give us a fighting chance in front of your broker in order to try and acquire some type of business, or make him aware of what Sanlam can offer him over a longer term. So remember, the more I invest, the longer I invest, the lower the EAC is going to be when I get to retirement. You also have the option of going 50% fund-based fee or 100% fund-based fee.
Sorry, Mareshni,
Yes.
would you mind just clarifying for the team just the difference between the three options, what it means for
Sure.
fund-based versus the rest?
Yeah, absolutely. So your initial 50% upfront fee means that if you're doing 1,000 Rand a month, increasing at 5% per annum over a 25-year period, it simply means that Sanlam, as a product house or as a company, we are giving your broker commission on premiums that we have not received as yet. So we're going on the premise that these premiums are going to be met over that 25-year period. So what would happen is that, let's say, your commission is going to be 12,000 Rand. I'm just using an example now. Your 50% initial fee is 12,000 Rand. So the broker receives commission on that 1,000 Rand a month at 5% per annum. And then every year thereafter, he's now going to receive another a portion of commission from every premium that comes into the policy. So we calculate this 1,000 Rand a month over 5% per annum, 25 years. There's a formula that we follow to determine what the initial com, or as we call it, upfront com, and then the payment-based fee will be based on his premium that comes in every time thereafter. Now, there's something that I want to talk to you about, which I find very important, and it's this right here. Your fund-based fee. Your fund-based fee is now going to be calculated off the amount that is in your fund value. So let's take Mareshni Naidu, for example. I've been with my broker for 10 years, and I've been contributing this 1,000 Rand a month. My fund value in this Cumulus Echo RE has now grown to 500,000 Rand. My broker, instead of taking payment-based fee, for example, he can actually do a fee renegotiation and receive commission on the 500,000 Rand that I have. So that's the pool that I have built over a 10-year period. More importantly, let's assume Sam and Jonathan and everybody else had policies with the same broker and they have a different fund value. He can also take commission of those fund values. The purpose behind that, or the reasoning behind that, is that those financial planners or intermediaries, they are there to check on you annually. They are there to ensure that the information that has come out from the company regarding their specific, either the fund or the portfolio or the product itself, is being communicated to them, that they understand what's happening. So whatever it is that the financial planner does for his clients, he's getting paid for this. In this scenario, the amount is a little bit less because it's coming off the premium. In this scenario, it's coming off the fund value. So if Jonathan, Sam, and I were his client base and the values altogether were 3 million, he's now not just earning off 1,000 Rand a month, he's earning off 3 million Rand. So understand your broker, understand his commission structure, and how is he growing his asset base. And that's very critical in the conversations that you're having, simply because if your broker is going payment-based com and fund-based fee, this commission structure may not apply to him. So if you are unsure, you simply say to him, he'll say, please, can you do me a quote for 1,000 Rand a month, 5% per annum over a 25-year period? Okay, great. Your commission structure, are you going to go 50% upfront, 50% as and when, or are you going to go payment-based comp with a fund-based fee? So now you're opening up the conversation a little bit more and also getting an understanding of how your broker works in the background. I hope that helps, Sam.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Okay, cool. From a flagship fund range, I think we have done a phenomenal job over the years. Again, we may not always hit the lights out in certain things, but every time a client either has a guarantee on his portfolio, if he has a different fund on his portfolio, if there's 100% allocation on his portfolio, these things add up in the form of a cost. That cost influences your client's return. So for example, I've been invested into a Satrix fund over a 10-year period and my return was 8%. At the end of the term, I will be paying 2% in fees and charges. Ultimately, all my net return is now going to be 6%. So every time there's a cost or a fund charge or a administrative cost, these things influence my client's return at the end of the term. Because what is the purpose of my RA? And what is the purpose of me growing or having this policy for a period of time? It's because I want to make money. I'm not going to be shy about it. That's why I'm investing. I, as the policy holder, I should be getting a decent enough return. So we've managed to cater from an in-house perspective. So our fund ranges from, or the cost ranges from about 0.5% to 0.72%. The diversified range, which you may know as a multi-manager range, is between 1.12 to 1.29. On this range, we have something called the Diversified Wealth Builder Fund. This fund actually has the inclusion of Allan Gray, Coronation, Laurium, and it has the Sanlam Balance Fund in it. Now, the purpose is that we have the ability to negotiate with these bigger asset management companies. So we say to them, hello, AG, we would like to give you, I don't know, a couple of billion. Would you mind managing our portfolio with us? Can we negotiate a few fees? Just at the cost of this to a maximum of 1.29%, if your client had to go into those funds directly, so if the broker had to select those funds on his own, it probably could cost him north of 1.3%. So it's higher than what we can offer him by giving him 4 funds in one component. So just keep that in the back of your mind. So again, diversified funds, as you would know, it is a multi-manager. The Satrix funds start off, like I mentioned, 0.3%, very popular. This is like almost for free, but not. So these are generally used to either lower the EAC cost. So if you put in either 25% or 50% into the fund choice, you have the ability to reduce the EAC mix. So if you take these two components, for example, let's say you went into the portfolio, you put 50% into the diversified fund and you put 50% into a passive fund. That EAC number may not be 1.29%. It will probably be lower.
Is it just me or have we lost Marishni?
We've lost her.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
There we go, you're back.
Yeah,
Oh, there you go.
I don't know what happened. I'm so sorry. I don't know
No
at
worries.
which point I lost you guys. I just heard it go boom on my
You were
side.
talking about the mix between diversified and passive,
Okay,
and
perfect.
the fee on that.
Okay, so basically by having these two portfolios in one mix, you can reduce the cost of the, let me try this again. I'm looking for my, beg your pardon. I don't know how I got kicked out.
I think your
first.
screens also stopped sharing since you got kicked off.
Okay.
I promise it wasn't one of us.
I didn't think so because you guys were asking me questions, so that's always a good sign. Okay, let's try this again. Take 4. Let's hope this works now. Am I in presentation mode?
No.
Not. Can you see my slides?
No.
No.
This is so crazy. What is happening? Okay, I'm going to leave and then I'm going to rejoin, guys. Give me a second. I'm not sure what is going on. at this point in time. I'm going to stop my slides. Okay. My apologies. Let's try this again. I just put everything. Okay, let me know when you can see my screen, please. Are we any closer to seeing the screen?
Nope.
Nope.
Are you serious? Guys, I'm at the office. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do now. That is so weird. Okay.
When you go to sharing, try sharing the screen, not your window.
She gone again.
You can buy any.
Guys, Mareshni's just called me. She's just experiencing some technical
Oh,
issues.
shame, man. Okay.
So she's gonna log on now.
Cool. Thanks,
Okay.
Jono.
Karen, are you in Joburg already?
No, my daughter went to Joburg. So they're on a
Oh.
bus for like 10 hours. There's a whole lot of teams from under 10s to under 17s driving up to Joburg today. And yeah, they start their tournament tomorrow and then they come back Monday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so to drop it off I was there at I think it was 10:15, 6:15 this morning.
They did give weather warnings again for the N3. Hope there's no issues on Monday. Mm.
Oh, well, I've got some friends in Joburg. I'll tell her to stay at some friends.
Hi, guys. Sorry, I rebooted. Let's try this again.
There we go. Now we can
Yay.
see.
Yay for me. Okay, cool. So by having the diversified fund and a passive fund, it actually influences the cost of those funds to reduce. So you may want to play around with those funds and offer them as suggestions. You're going to get some brokers that are going to stick to the funds that they know and the ones that they truly use all the time. in those cases, there's certain things that we can't do. So the other thing that I've experienced, I'm just going to obviously put it out there, is that with the bigger brokers now, those that have had books for like years, some of the funds that they're using, boutique range funds, we don't offer them on our platform. So maybe what you could say to them is that within the diversified range, the Lorium fund, which does come from a boutique manager, is also catered for you on that diversified fund. But again, we can't have all the funds available to our brokers. The next fund that we offer, and these are two unique funds that I'm going to just mention to you. The first one is more for a risk-averse client. And the purpose of this fund is that we know of clients that want upside growth but downside protection, and we were able to give them exactly what they needed. So we use as a backdrop the Satrix balanced fund, the dynamic balanced fund. And the purpose that we use it for is one, to keep the costs down, and also to track the return of those portfolios. So basically what would happen is that your client will have exposure to the growth assets, but at the beginning of every month, Sanlam is going to say, okay, the way we see what's going to happen economically, we're going to declare X amount as a percentage to these bonuses. And sometimes what used to happen in the past, you had to wait for 5 years before those bonuses vested or upon retirement. We are vesting those bonuses every single month. So the client receives the full bonuses throughout his contribution and the term that he's serving on the plan. We offer up to 100% capital protection after costs, and all in, including your guarantee and your fund, your total investment fee is 1.1%. Now, you're probably wondering, which broker am I going to sell this to? Generally, those brokers that are in the all mutual space. So that big green company, they offer also those smooth funds. If you want to do something similar, and if they are using it on their platforms at the moment, you may want to mention this fund to those brokers. So the purpose of it is to give your client that peace of mind, knowing that we can reduce the volatility that they would be experiencing in an open-ended portfolio, for example. We will want them to have their monies keep up with inflation and beyond. But when times are tough, we are able to protect those clients through the guarantees. And during times of retirement, ill health, and even death, we are able to protect those clients. So again, this is for your risk-averse client. The next one, which honestly, I think this is like a real banger, guys, is your Satrix Global Wealth Builder Fund. So this, firstly, it's a global fund that can only be accessed through Cumulus Echo RA and through the Flexi retirement plan. So both these funds, only retirement contributions. So again, Reg 28 compliant, we can allocate, and currently we are, up to 100% in international assets. If there are any other companies that are offering this fund, please let me know, because I don't think there is. So a unique opportunity for those brokers that have a lot of exposure to international assets. So the reason why we've come up with this is that within CRAF, which is our Sanlam's Central Retirement Fund, we have said CRAF needs to be Reg 28, having South African assets and international assets. But you and I as individuals, we don't have to comply with having international or South African exposure, as long as the fund is Reg 28. So the law was a bit gray in that area. We found the opportunity and we were able to launch this fund at a cost of 0.9% on your retirement annuity. Now think about it. If you have a client that's a professional that wants exposure outside of South Africa for his retirement plan, tick. This is the client we're looking for. High net worth individual, so not necessarily a professional, anybody that's high net worth that's looking for this exposure. But how do you niche down in your broker space? How do you know what to put forward for your broker? Understanding his business, which clients are he's writing up, what the professions of his high net worth clients. You may not have all the answers, but just a basic overview of how his practice operates, you are able to either offer the Satrix Smooth Growth Fund or the Global Fund or a diversified fund or a Satrix fund. So we've catered from that aspect for pretty much all clients.
So Marishni,
Yes.
we get a lot of the time, we have quite a lot of fresh brokers from our LPI space, and most of the time they ask us to please suggest funds, which obviously is not ideal. But I mean, that's our biggest struggle, is what do we offer them
I'm glad you asked
as a
that
sort of like
question, Sam.
package?
Yeah, no, it does put you in a bit of a predicament, because ultimately, in a very indirect way, by you putting it on paper, that's advice. But again, it's how you understand what is needed. So you need to understand, how old is your client? What is your client investing for? What is his expectation in terms of a risk profile? Because when you put it in the client's, throw it into his court, and if he's going to say to you, sorry, let me just switch on my camera, I just realized I'm speaking to myself here. If you say to him, so what is your client's expectation? Suddenly you are now aligning his risk profile along with his expectation. Because if my client is expecting a return of 10% and his risk profile says he's moderately conservative or moderate, does his risk profile tie up with his expectation? So you do one of two things. You either lower his expectation or you change his risk profile. So that's the conversation you actually need to have with your broker, because it's easy for me to say, oh, wow, such a smooth growth fund. Oh, wow, global wealth builder. But I don't know your client, you do. But as long as I'm able to ask the basic questions, then you are able to offer or direct him in from a fund perspective. I just want to take you back here a little bit. So even if you are able to understand his risk profile, from an efficient frontier perspective, from a risk-adjusted perspective, you're able to map it down in terms of the different risk profile funds that we're offering him. So maybe that's another value add that you can share with your broker.
So maybe using that grid as
Correct.
going, if it's passive or or a mixture of both, then this is the funds that we're looking at. And then Marishni, what are your thoughts on, I mean, I had a look at the Glacier shopping list, and there's a couple of funds that I see that are on the RA. So Coronation, Alan Gray, Coronation Plus, Forward Balance 91. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Or does this just drive the price up?
It does. It's a little bit more expensive. So that's why I would say try the diversified range. So understanding his business is number one. So if they are not using any of those funds at the moment, start them off with the Sanlam flagship funds before you allow exposure into other funds. Because we are not able to tell you from an asset management perspective what's Coronation's thoughts on why they've chosen 75% into equity. That is an internal thing within Coronation. We can tell you from a Sanlam perspective how our funds work. So
Gotcha.
Keeping the internal funds, the cost in mind, and even mixing it up. So even if you're giving him an external partner, you can mix it up with the Satrix fund, for example.
Okay, great.
Cool. Right. Let's go on to the reason why we are here, which is the wealth bonus. So this is where I'm going to go through a few examples with you, but I need you to understand the wealth bonus. So the wealth bonus, like I mentioned earlier, is a rebate of your fees and your charges. So depending on your term, we will calculate the wealth bonus. If you're a standard client, you will get a 50% bonus at the end of your 25-year period. If you're a graduate, 51%, and a professional, 52%. Remember, I mentioned that earlier on. If your client just wanted to do a Section 14 transfer and is going to retire in 25 years' time, that individual will be given a 40% bonus. For every time there's new money, inverted commas, coming onto the platform, you're going to get a different bonus. So no bonuses are going to be either the same or identical, because it really does depend on when you get onto the platform. And I've got some examples to show you. But what's important is just very basic. If Mareshni Naidu were to invest for 25 years and her fund value after costs and charges were R1,000,000, she doesn't retire with R1,000,000. She will retire with 1.5 million, because whatever my value, my fund value is at the end of the term, that is the way my bonus will be calculated. So the percentages are guaranteed. What you see in front of you is guaranteed, provided you stay the full term in the portfolio to be able to get these benefits. So guys, just as a side note, Sam mentioned that you guys have new brokers. So maybe this is something that you want to talk to them about, use it, don't use it. If you have individuals, and me personally, I have my daughter who have taken out an RA4, and she's going to be on this platform for the next 50 years or so. Her EAC on this product specifically is 0.8%. Guys, 0.8% for a retirement annuity over a 50-year period. There's two things that I did. I had to ask myself, if she gets to retirement, will she be able to afford medical aid? And so that is the reason that I actually put money into this portfolio. And number two, by buying her gifts, I'm not being savvy in terms of how I spend my money. So the best way for me to be a little savvy was to redirect, spoiling her in that sense. I'm not saying my child doesn't get a gift. It's just not as many as she used to. And giving her something to look forward to when she's of retirement age. So I'll give it to her on her 21st birthday. Say happy 21st. You can open it up when you're 65. Hopefully she doesn't use the two-part system. But anyway, be that as it may, the point is with a 300 Rand premium, you have the ability to sell multiple RAs, child RAs, to parents, and asking them to just rebudget and rethink about where they want their children to be when they retire. So ideally, she should be using this for medical aid purposes, because let's face it, medical aid cost is ridiculous. And then when she starts working, she can start up her own pension provident retirement annuity. So this is just a kickstart for her for the future.
That's a really cool opportunity. And what fund did you use for your daughter?
It's the Satrix Balance Fund. The dynamic
Cool.
balance fund. Yeah. Yeah. So I kept the cost very low, Sam. And like I said, 0.8%, guys. There is
Crazy.
no
Yeah.
other insurer that could have come close to that cost on an RA. Okay. So the wealth bonus calculation. So this is where things get interesting. Again, I mentioned, just to rehash, if I'm invested for 25 years, I will receive a 50% bonus. So all this writing that you see simply means after costs and charges, whatever the performance is after costs and charges. So my percentage of 50% multiplied by my fund value multiplied by the factor. So this is the important part. The factor simply means I have done nothing negative to this policy. I have kept this policy. I've paid every single premium for the duration of the 25 years. I didn't reduce my premium. I didn't stop paying my premium increase. I didn't, opt out for more than a year and then jumped back in. So the factor will always be 1 if I continue to pay all my premiums. And of course, if death happens, I will get a factor of 1. My chosen retirement date, factor of 1. If I do a lump sum, the factor will always be 1. And if I have any ill health, the factor will be 1 when they pay out my contributions. So very simply, what does this mean? If I have 1,000 Rand a month and I'm investing for 25 years, I will receive a 50% bonus. So at the end of the term, my bonus, the fund value will be 339,000, because 50% of 339,000 with a factor of 1 means I will receive 169,000. So I don't retire of 339,000, but I retire with 508,000 Rand. So now, here's the difference between me eating 2-minute noodles during my retirement or having a bit of a Steers cheat burger on a Saturday, having a 10% premium increase. Because ideally, I want my money to keep up with the inflation in the future, right? My original contribution of 1,000 Rand will receive a 50% bonus. Any new money that comes into the system, so any premium increase, the 100 Rand for 24 years will receive a bonus of 46%. The next year, my premium increase is 110 Rand. I'm investing for 23 years. The bonus receives a 42% premium increase. And then the following year, 121 Rand. It's a 22-year period. I'm now 22 years closer to retirement. I get a 38%. So this calculation will continue until I get to retirement. Now, with the combined layers, so these premium increases are referred to as layers. Sanlam, we're very fancy. We will calculate those layers, and we have used a weighted calculation. We've basically amortized it. It's 26.2%. My fund value that I've accumulated is 1.29%. Multiplied by a factor of 1 gives me a wealth bonus of 338,000 Rand. And therefore, I will retire with 1.6 million Rand if my eyes can see that clearly, because I have terrible eyesight and I'm not wearing my glasses. Yes, that's 1.6 million. So I will retire with 1.6 million because of just adding on a premium increase. And every year I will receive a different bonus because I'm now a year closer to retirement. In the next example, again, it's just displaying how the calculation works. So I just want to take you through how the factor is influenced. So basically it says, or the calculation is, 1,000 Rand a month multiplied by 12 months, multiplied by 25 years, divided by 1,000 Rand a month multiplied by 12 months, multiplied by 25 years, gives you a factor of 1. If I were to keep my policy for a further 5 years, the factor will still remain 1 because 1 is 100, right? The factor will still remain the same, but the wealth bonus percentage will change. It will increase. Instead of receiving a 50% bonus, I'm now going to receive a 70% bonus. And therefore, my wealth bonus is 557,000, and I will retire with 1.3 million versus 858,000. In the third example, and this is an individual that now retires early. This is where things start to get a little bit tricky. Because I have only paid premiums for 15 years, and I've stayed in the policy for 15 years, a very simple calculation, 15 years divided by 25 years means my factor is now 0.6% and not 1%. So I didn't stay for the full term. And because I retired in 15 years' time, I'm just going to take you back here very quickly, just to show you. In 15 years, and I'm a standard client, the bonus payable in 15 years is 20%. So we fast forward again. You would notice the bonus is 20%. So 20% of my fund value of 261,000 multiplied by 0.6% gives me a bonus of 31,400 Rand. And therefore, I retire with 293,000 Rand. So guys, when individuals stop paying their premiums or they opt out early, this is the effect of their decision versus staying in a policy for a longer period of time. And in this scenario, even longer. So here's what you need to ask yourself. If you were to retire in 25 years' time, how much of money should I have in 25 years' time that's going to last me another 20 years or 25 years? So how long do you think you're going to survive? How long will that pot of money that I've accumulated at the end of my 25-year period is going to last me if I'm going to live another 20 or 25 years' time? And that is the difference and the conversation that we need to start having with clients. And that's when it comes to two-part, I'm getting a little nervous about it because of the effect of people's decisions and what it's going to mean to them in the future. So remember, government is actually paying you to stay invested with us. And that's what we want. And the two-part is counterintuitive. So think about it. If I'm contributing towards an RA, and I'm receiving a rebate from the receiver, I'm not paying any tax within the fund accrual of the proceeds. So basically the growth on my portfolio doesn't attract any capital gains tax, dividend withholding tax, income tax. But the moment I decide that 10 years down the line, I'm going to withdraw money, I'm now paying tax. My marginal tax rate applies on my two-part money. And then the deduction that I receive no longer applies because I'm going to probably pay more tax the following year. So that's why I say it's counterintuitive when you're withdrawing from your retirement annuity. It defeats the purpose of why you took up the retirement annuity. I'm not going to go through that, but I do want to go through this with you very quickly. This is an important calculator, and I think this is one of the best things that in our hidden treasures. If you look at this contribution of 6,250 Rand, the purpose of this calculator is if your client were to take out his retirement, his rebate. So a client puts in his retirement annuity, he submits his tax return, and he gets a rebate from the receiver of revenue. If that individual had to take his full amount and put it back into his RA year in and year out, he could perhaps boost up to 50% of his contribution. So let's go through it. The client is contributing 6,250 Rand with a 10% premium increase. And let's say his net return after costs and charges is 4%. We will always use 6% as according to ASISA standards. So that's why you will see that return of 4%. Over a 25-year term, the client is going to stay invested with us, which is 300 months. How scary is that? The taxable income for this client who's earning around 500,000 Rand is about 36%. So this is his marginal tax rate. Let's assume that the client had received a rebate over a period of time. And every year he puts in this rebate into his RA. Instead of the client retiring of 10 million Rand, we can actually get this client up to 15 million Rand. Now, guys, this is a conversation that you want to also drive with your broker. Now, I'm not saying in a perfect world, your client is going to put in his full rebate into his RA, but this is a conversation starter for your broker. This is something that he can use for his clients when he's speaking to them, even if it's a portion of their RA that they put back into their retirement annuity, which means the rebate for the following year could potentially be higher than the one he had got in the current year. And it's a compounding benefit. You're not paying any tax within the product. So the future of that money is even better because of all these things that you've teed up for his retirement years. Okay, and then, yeah, just a little bit about volatility. I don't think this is something I'm going to touch on at this point, but I just want to show you a quick example, and I think this gives me the heebie-jeebies every time I see this. Did you know that if you have a retirement amount of 1 million Rand, it will give you, and this was a slide we did a few years ago, between 4,500 Rand to 4,800 Rand of income. So if you take your current salary, and if you want to comfortably retire, you should receive between 60 to 75% of your current income. So when clients are having conversations around, I can only afford 500 Rand, or I can only do X amount of money, this is your client's reality, this right here, is that 1 million Rand could potentially, in today's terms, buy you between 4,500 to 4,800 Rand worth of income. And then finally, I just want to show you one last thing, which is a compound interest calculator. This is very interesting. So we have a client that has a 300 Rand a month RA with a 10% contribution over a 25-year term. I used a 5% return. If the client retires in 25 years' time, she'll get around about 550,000. But let's say we took out an RA for the child when the child was born. 300 Rand a month, 10% per annum increase, retiring in 55 years' time with a 5% return. Exactly the same. All I did was just change the term. The child will probably receive around 12 million Rand. So what are the conversations that you are driving with your brokers? How do I add impact and value in my broker's life? Because as much as it's important to receive the application form, I must know that there is a certain value that I'm adding to the business. And yeah, so I'm hoping that helps you guys. But I just want to show you something last before we go quickly. I'm going to take you through this very quickly. Have you guys seen this Mfana slide, Sam? I know some of you have setting
I've
on
seen
this.
it. I don't know if everyone else has seen it.
Okay, guys, so we're going to go through this quickly because I can talk really fast. Okay, we have Sam, I beg your pardon, Mfana, who's age 30, and he starts his RA after the 1st of September. And he's going to retire at age 55. If he has a policy that increases at inflation rate of 6% per annum and a net return of 8%, Mfana doesn't have to cash out his policy every year, or his two-part savings every year. But 12 years down the line, Mfana decides that he is going to cash out his retirement savings, and that has accumulated to 230,000 Rand. Now, remember, this is not just an Mfana thing, guys. We are all Mfanas if we don't cash out our two-part now. We have the ability to accumulate it, and in 10 or 12 years' time, this could possibly, tempt us a little bit. Because of his tax rate of 31,000 Rand, Mfana is going to pay 71,400 Rand in tax, and he will be left with 158,000 Rand, provided he doesn't owe SARS any money. Because if he stayed with Sanlam, he would receive around 4.8 million Rand. But because he cashed out before and he took out his lump sum 12 years down the line, his retirement proceeds are just under 4.1 million Rand. That's about 730,000 Rand difference, guys. That's the impact of a client's decision for two-part. And that's, again, conversations that we need to drive just to educate. Yeah. And that's it from me. I think I've taken it, and I do apologize for all the tech issues that I experienced.
No worries. We all have those. Marishi, thank you very much. I think that
It's
was
a
an
pleasure.
amazing session.